This is the best of the Good Advice podcast, the top 10 best episodes from the last 4 years of the Good Advice podcast. Thank you guys for tuning into the podcast, and I hope you enjoy this episode. And don't forget, you can catch our weekly episodes on the Good Advice podcast on any platform you listen to the show, as well as on our YouTube and LinkedIn pages. Hey, thanks for checking out another episode of the Good Advice podcast, bringing you episode 150. Woo, man, I cannot believe we've made it here. 150 episodes, huge achievement. I want to thank my people who've been following the podcast, who even have jumped on Patreon to support the podcast. Thank you so much. And of course, I had to do something big for 150th episode. I had to bring back not just anyone. I had to reach out to an agent and really get a hold of the most downloaded episode guest from last year, or one of the most downloaded. I went back and I found one of the best guests that you guys liked listening to. And I said, hey, you got to come back for episode 150. I got to get you on. If you can find time in your schedule, you got to be on today. And so, of course, for today's episode, I'm bringing you this amazing guest. Welcome back to the show, Joy, my wife.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, you were able to make time in your very busy day.
Right.
To make it all the way here, the same room that we were working in, to do this episode.
Right. Very far travel.
Now, I know it's, we'll have to see how this episode goes because for two reasons. One, I was telling you this morning, hey, I'm doing my 150th episode. And you were like, yeah, cool, great. And hadn't really put much, I was like, what should I talk about? Right. And I don't remember what we said, but I was like, what if you came on the podcast again?
Yeah, it was that simple.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it really wasn't that much. And see, I did this huge intro on like all the work I put into, but really we were like sipping coffee. And
this
I was
morning.
Like, yeah. I was like, hey, do you want to just jump on here with me? And you were like, okay.
Sure.
But then you were like, what are we going to talk about? And I was like, I don't really know what we're going to talk about. So who knows where this episode is going to go? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, since both of us are in here, no one's in the other room watching our daughter. And
right.
Not that she's like, eating
She's
glue.
Asleep, everybody, yeah, and we have a monitor.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. We wouldn't just leave our kid. I mean, some people might, but so she is asleep in the other room.
In case you hear her waking up.
Yeah, we have the monitor here because obviously we can't send the dog to take care of her. But at some point she's going to wake up, which means we're going to have to cut this episode short and take care of her. So we don't know how long this episode is going to be. Hopefully, I mean, I'm already seeing her move on this monitor.
Dang it.
Yeah, dang it. But we're just going to hope that she puts herself back to sleep and that we get an actual good episode in for our episode 150. So Joy, again, thank you for being here today. I love having you on the show. I wasn't joking to the audience. Joy, when she came on, I think she was episode 75.
Yep.
Literally one of the most downloaded episodes. Apparently people like listening to you more than they like listening to me.
Well, I don't know about that.
But what people may not know this about you, Joy, is that Joy is... I think I've had people make jokes about, you're so lucky to have me because I have all this business knowledge. But really, for people who don't know, Joy started her business long before I started my business. I've built my business on the back of her business. So actually, all of my business acumen really comes from Joy. So Joy, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your business and what you do for a living?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't know. That's very kind of you, all those compliments. So yeah, my business is named Culture Connection. And essentially what I do is I teach two different languages. I teach American Sign Language online and Spanish online. I have private one-on-one lessons with different students from all over the U.S. And yeah, I have just a love for those languages, and I wanted to connect people not only to the language, but the culture of the people who speak those languages, just so that, yeah, it could open doors and be a bridge to different cultures for people.
So Joy is basically a walking Rosetta Stone because she doesn't just know American Sign Language and Spanish. You also know, let's think about this, English. That's important. That counts.
Definitely, yeah.
You know a little bit of German.
A little bit.
You know a little bit of Korean.
Right.
You know a little bit of Colombian Sign Language, which before I met you, I didn't realize that there wasn't like a universal. But then when I think about it, it's like American, of course, American Sign Language wouldn't be like a world sign language. Is there like a world sign language?
No. I mean, I've heard stuff about there.
Is that a stupid question that I asked it, or is that?
It's not a stupid. No, actually, it's not a stupid question because it's a very commonly asked question. But no, each country, each demographic has essentially their own sign language.
Now,
lot of them.
I'm just curious. Does
compare.
You would think that we would have this conversation before, but we haven't. Does every country have its own sign language, or do some countries borrow other countries' sign language?
Well, okay, first I want to say I'm not an expert in this, so I could definitely be like fact checked and be wrong. But as far as I know,
someone's furiously typing right now. Like, I'm gonna find out.
Like as far as I know, like each country has their own. Now there probably exist some smaller countries that have adapted sign languages from, for example, like American Sign Language was very heavily influenced from French Sign Language in France. Instead of, you'd think, oh, maybe ours, since we speak English, maybe Great Britain or England, maybe their sign language. No, it's like very, very different. Mexican Sign Language also has a lot of similarities between American Sign Language, but still it has its own. And then other Latin American countries also differ from Mexican Sign Language. So it's not like all Spanish speaking people countries like have their same one. It's different.
And then something else that I've wondered about too. So you know how like in different Latin countries, how accent plays a role,
right,
and how certain things are said. So like great example. Actually, I'm gonna butcher this example because I can't fully remember what it is, but it's like putting like a th on
yes,
or a d
in Spain, like the letter C, when it makes an S sound, in Spain, it makes like a th sound. Like it's hot if they say like hace calor, hace with a.
Yeah. Okay.
It kind of sounds like a lisp. Sorry.
They don't. And it's not a lisp. It's just
Yeah, it's the accent.
So does sign language have any kind of, I don't know if that's the right word, like accent to it?
Yeah, they do. If you travel through, if you were to meet a deaf person in California or Texas or, the Northwest, you'd see a differentiation, a variation of different signs, like maybe the word cake or the word.
It seems like a random example.
Well, it's just because I remember that one is.
What do Texans have to do with their cake versus California?
I don't know.
We're going to tell you how cake is really. All right. So give me an example of like one of these differences. Like I know you said cake. Is that the easiest example, or is there one that's easy for you to?
Well, many signs when I teach my students have variations. I'm not super familiar with exactly what region signs which, but there's like 3 different signs for the word computer. There's many signs for the word cake. There's different signs for the word. The way you might sign the word like live with an L handshake or an A handshake. I don't know.
So getting even more granular here. So you know how like there's like stereotypes attached. So like people with like a Southern accent, like we joke people who are like, I would die, like, or they say orange, not even like the fruit, but like orange you going to. And then you and I joke about chuck it or chunk it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. That's ridiculous.
If you're getting rid of something, obviously you're going to chunk it.
No, obviously you're going to chuck it.
Yeah, well.
Get rid of that.
This is a divide in our marriage. But so you know how like people, because we're in the South, a lot of times we get stereotypes or jokes made about us for having that Southern drawl. Like maybe
even though I am from the Midwest, I want to say.
Right. I'm from the South, but you're living in the South right now. But so you have like that Southern drawl. And so it's like maybe that person's uneducated or whatever like ascriptions you can make to the person. Does the same thing ever happen in sign language? Like do people, whether it's like accent or...
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what does that look like?
I mean, man, there is a whole world of like stereotypes, even just among only deaf people. They, depending on how long you've been deaf, how long you've been signing, maybe you might come into deaf culture having voiced before. And so maybe your sign is more syntax, which is like sentence structure. Maybe the syntax is more equivalent to that of the English language. And then so a person who's been deaf for like, and their family for many generations are all deaf, they're really proud of ASL being very distinct from English. So if they see another deaf person who's signing in any type of way that kind of hints towards more mirroring English syntax, then they're going to be stereotyped as like, oh, you're not deaf, you know,
like authentically.
Yeah. Or,
interesting.
You know, and so, yeah, there's a lot, you know, and there's also this thing called lexicalized signs. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But like if certain signs, just like I said earlier, the sign for the word live or life, it starts with the letter L. So there is a variation where you could do it with the letter L, a hand shape of the letter L. But then there's another hand shape where it's not that. But some people, I feel comfortable because, you know, live starts with L. I'm going to do it with it. Some deaf people might say, you're trying to, again, be as close to English as you can. It's comfortable for you. That's the letter L. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be pure ASL, deaf, you know. So there tends to be that, you know, you're signing like that, you must be like this.
Yeah, it's amazing something as simple as language, even beyond the words or the signs, all the implications that can come for it. And I guess we all do it, you know, and it's sometimes to our own detriment. But I actually didn't even really plan on us getting super in the weeds, but I'm amazed that we've been married for almost 7 years, and I've never had this kind of conversation with you. So this has been kind of fun.
Little ASL lesson of the day.
Yeah. So people can check out cultureconnection.com.
Cultureconnectionjoy.com.
Joy.com. Well, another reason I brought you on the podcast wasn't just to talk about Culture Connection. I thought it'd be great. You know, so we're celebrating 150 episodes. The podcast has been around for 2 years as of last month. Seen a lot of cool statistics that have come with that. It's been listened to in over 40 different countries.
Good job, babe.
Thanks, honey. Thousands of downloads of the episodes. Launched our Patreon last week, and so it's kind of started to grow into this really. In fact, I remember back in February, placing in the top 50 for entrepreneurship, top 200 for business, and so I, as the podcast founder, I throw up all these statistics. I get really excited. I know whenever the podcast first started, I would publish an episode and I'd look at the stats and I'd be like, okay, 2 downloads. And like one was me. And then you'd be like, hey, I listened to your episode. It was really great. So I know you were really trying to support me. I want to ask you about that more in detail. Obviously, you're running your own business. Obviously, you're making things happen on your end. But having a husband who basically quit his job, and we actually kind of flipped roles a little bit if we think about it, because I was a student, you were working, you quit your job to start your business.
Right.
And then as you were running your business,
we were poor for a little bit.
But you quit your business. I didn't even realize this actually has already happened. Then I started my job. I quit that job, started my business. I'd love to hear, not just with the podcast, but with the business in general, what's it been like in your world as a partner, as a spouse? You know, obviously you have all of your stuff going on as well, but I'd love to kind of get an outside perspective on what does it look like for you in really having this interesting position of running your own business, but also emotionally supporting someone else who's running their business. I'd love to get more insight from you there.
Well, yeah, I'd say it's definitely been like a learning journey for me. As far as, I don't know, like I'm just drawing from different memories I have, I guess. I can remember there being times at the beginning when, with all the excitement and vision that you had, you know, when someday maybe something didn't go right or something the way you had wanted it to go. Like, I just remember having to pull from almost the exact type of encouragement you had given me years before. Like reminding me of like my value, reminding me of my worth, reminding me of my abilities and my skill. And there I was, like literally verbatim telling you what you had told me. And I was like, this is almost like, this is your turn to really really absorb it for truth for you. And so, yeah, I can remember doing that, and that just being kind of neat. Also, I think it's fun seeing you thrive in something you're passionate about. I can also recall there being times when you were asking maybe for my opinion. Maybe you'd written something, or maybe, I don't know. I don't remember exactly what, but I remember there being a few times where I was thinking, oh, like, Blake loves growth. He's really teachable. And I can remember being like, oh, well, yeah, that's really good. What if you changed that? And I remember now it's really, it just, if I were to say something like that, you'd just take it and be like, that's great. But I remember that those first few months, or that maybe even that first year, like, I had to learn how to best
give criticism.
And how to support you the best, because even if it was a tiny criticism, and even if I sandwiched it with like this, you're awesome, you're great, maybe fix that, you're still awesome, you would maybe be like, what do you know? Yeah, like you'd react in a way, not rude, but you just react as if I kind of like just gut punched you, and I was like,
let the air out of the balloon a little
bit.
Right.
I had to reflect later, like, okay, right now my role is to just be 100% supportive. And if that means like giving him an applause all the time, like obviously if there was something ridiculous like that, I'd have to bring up, sure. But I'm mostly, it was like
your
tiny
crippling
things.
drug addiction. I don't know about this.
So that was a learning curve, like definitely like figuring out how to best support you and how to best give you criticism. And then sometimes we're to just like wait on that and not give it to you because you're learning and you were like vulnerable in certain moments. And I had to just totally, so that was, yeah.
Do you feel like, because like this is a genuine question, because I really don't remember. It really feels like it's amazing how time goes by. I don't remember what it felt like when you quit your job and started your business. But I remember I was a student. I remember we were relying on your income, but I remember it was like, yeah, let's do it. And then it's fuzzy to me, like the details of what that looked like. And the reason I'm asking about this is because I feel like that, and even I have moments now, but it feels like that first year of starting Good Advice, I feel like I was really fragile. Like, because you mentioned like, okay, how do I give this criticism without, not that I would like blow up, but just like without totally deflating Blake.
Right.
But I remember feeling like, again, passionate, driven. And this is something that every entrepreneur goes through. Every business owner goes through this, of being really jazzed around your idea and then realizing, okay, wow, this is actually really hard. This is actually really challenging. But I remember me being myself, being like, oh my gosh, like, how do I have the right headspace today? How do I have the right mentality? Did you go through anything? Because again, I literally don't remember. I don't remember the way I felt of being kind of in these throes of like peaks and valleys, where some days I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm changing the world. And then some days being like, I have ruined my family's future. And I don't know if it's a difference in our genders or what, but I just don't remember seeing that in you. What was it like for you when you had quit your job and started your business?
Let's see. I think you maybe just don't remember, but I'm an outward processor. I have to like verbalize things out loud. And I remember many a conversation where I had to think about what I was doing. Just with my, like at the beginning, it was really hard because even though I was blessed to receive a lot of students at the beginning and not feel like, oh, I have no one to work with. The issue was like the preparation and the feeling of like self-worth. Am I qualified? Am I capable? Like, am I doing right by my students? And all of those fears and doubts of myself, I voiced them to you. And I think you listened, you walked me through it. You like built a lot of confidence in me. You even helped me kind of develop some of my content, I think, or at least like a foundation for it, for me to fill in. So for me, there was a lot of stress. I felt definitely very stressed. There were many like late nights where I was like working and prepping, and I think I had a healthy balance though of like excitement, and then I also had a lot of social interaction like with my students. So I feel like the main difficulty was just feeling stressed of how to like prioritize and manage everything, and then feeling down on myself. And I think that's where you definitely, you have a knack for organizing and helping me prioritize, and then also listening and then going, Joy, I think what you're saying is this. You did a lot of that. So maybe you don't remember, maybe because you do it all the time for me, unrelated to work stuff. But yeah, I think so. And then, when I had a lesson that maybe I just felt flopped or something, or maybe a student who ended lessons with me because of different reasons, and I took it personally, you were a shoulder during those times too. Just sometimes I just wanted to share this one little thing. There was a lot in your first year and then my first year of my business and with yours where we had to turn up some Eye of the Tiger music and put up our hands so the other person could have a punching bag, and we just you got this. And we just had to pump each other up.
So in drilling into that a little bit deeper, it feels like we all kind of go through, I don't know if it's a rite of passage or really what it is, but it feels like we all go through this really challenging, I don't know the word for it. It's like discovering truth around our self-worth. And obviously you and I are both Christian. We have this anchor of who God says we are, and we can go to that and look at that. But I'm thinking about people who maybe, even if they are Christian, they haven't really cemented onto that anchor, or people who maybe they don't have a faith. They don't have a religion that they ascribe to. It feels like a lot of people have to really navigate this journey of finding your self-worth and your self-value. And a lot of times when we talk about this, what we envision is sometimes someone on the floor of their bathroom, in a ball, I'm worthless, but it's really not always like that. A lot of times it's what you and I are talking about, where, you have a lesson, or I had a presentation, or I had a client, or I had a podcast, and it's dude, that sucked. And maybe it didn't actually suck, but knowing what we're capable of, it's that was so much farther below what I know I'm capable of. Therefore, I must be valueless, and all these things we go through emotionally. Why does it feel like it's so hard for us as individuals? Why do we have to? And I'm not saying we we should be able to do it by ourselves, but I'm noticing this trend where you're down in yourself, and I had to really speak life into you. Hey, this is what's true about you. This is what I've noticed. And it's genuine. It's these are actual things I've noticed in you, and vice versa. When I'm down on myself, where I'm having a bad day, or I'm having, you joked about maybe that first year and you were having to really encourage and pour in. It's beautiful to have something like that. But why does it seem as individuals, it's so common for us to struggle with an accurate perspective of who we are and what we have to offer?
Wow. I feel I don't know the statistic of this, but I feel I've maybe heard something where negativity, the default is almost to be negative. So for example, when you write an article, right, on LinkedIn, and you receive good feedback, and that happens often, then the moment you receive one comment or one thing, any type of negative feedback, it can just take the wind out of you, or just make you second guess yourself, right? And I'm not just talking about you, Blake, yourself.
You're talking about generally when people receive feedback.
When you receive feedback, and it's not, maybe it's not even proper feedback, someone just being a jerk or something, and then it's all of a sudden that phrase or word or that feeling that you felt when you read that or heard whatever, it's kind of that is a banner over you for a little bit. And it's almost that defines, it's easy to get stuck in the negative. And so whether, I think what you're asking is whether that's from someone else or whether that's just some negative feedback you're feeding or telling yourself, I feel it's natural for us to default and remember those things, which is why it's we have blinders on to all the different victories we've had and our positive, the positive things people have spoken over us. It's almost we have to remember that, and then also tell ourselves. And so because it's just so easy, like that's just an example. And I think that reflects the truth of how easy it is, how fragile we are as human beings to like just rest in a negative than it is to like push for being positive. Whether it's, how are you today? Oh, I'm busy or I'm tired. Oh yeah, me too. Oh man. Instead of being like that goody goody, he's like, well, I'm happy. It's like that same scenario happens in our own souls about ourselves. Like, am I making sense?
Oh yeah.
I just think that's why we have to have, like, right now I'm literally looking at our wall and there's a what do you call that thing?
Yeah, corkboard.
And it's called we have victory board, and it's like all the cards Blake's ever been sent or the thank yous or what have you are tacked up there, so you can, when you're feeling down, you can look at those. Just to remind ourselves.
It's interesting that, I guess it's the expression misery loves company, and you pointed out that it's so much easier for people to be like, this sucks, and someone else be like, oh yeah, this does suck, rather than the opposite. It's almost like in our nature a bit to be negative. It feels like it's kind of,
we want the positive, but it takes a little work to get there.
Right.
You have to.
It's kind of like when you wake up in the morning, and I don't know the genetic mechanism for this, but it's like when you wake up in the morning and you feel it's like, oh yeah, today's gonna suck. Like, it's just in your head.
I call it, I'm just in a funk.
Yeah, it's the funk, and whether it maybe sometimes it's physical, so like back pain, joints hurt, whatever. Other times it's just like emotionally, it's just like I just know today's going to suck. It feels like that. And then when you have that feeling on you, to then flip that and be like, no, I'm going to be positive, I'm having a good day. That feels so exhausting to like force yourself to think of it differently.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm just observing how it feels like it's so much more work to be positive and energetic and optimistic than it is to give into the negative, be cynical, be hopeless. And maybe that's because, the news cycle is mostly negative news. It's pretty rare that you see like, hey, here's, Friday's fun news or, whatever. But I don't know. It's interesting.
But yeah, but I think the lie in that is that like, oh, it's just easy to stay in this funk or whatever. But it's the easy part. But it's like, well, it's not necessarily that it's untrue, because it is a little easier, but is it worth it? Because the moment you kind of can shake that, whether it's like, for me as like a believer in Jesus, like, having a quiet time or kind of getting my mind off of me, or whether it's kind of doing a workout, something that kind of helps you shake it, or just like telling yourself like, no, I'm not going to let my attitude or my feelings, define this day or what have you. The moment you do, sometimes it can be so simple of just like, why do I feel this way? Oh, for no reason, or this is the reason. And then you get past it and you move on. It's like, this is like, yeah, this is how I really want my day to be. And then I think it's worth it to just push through that mental block, push through that negativity. And once you do, it's like, yeah, this can be I can redeem this day. I can.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a bit of a habit. It's kind of like there's a little bit of a habit forming that needs to happen, I guess, to shape yourself to be positive and joyful and optimistic. Because if we are, as beings, we tend towards negative, or maybe negative is too strong of a word. Maybe it's just that we notice negative things more easily. You mentioned, and everyone who's had any kind of social media presence knows, you post something and people are like, yes, great, love this. But the one person, which today I feels like people are so unkind, because someone won't just say they disagree. They'll say, hey, I disagree, and you're an idiot.
Right. They'll name call.
Yeah. It's so there's so much vitriol that happens. And so naturally we pick up on that negative comment more easily or more quickly.
I think there's a statistic, like for every negative thing that's been spoken over you, like you have to hear like 10 positives to like fully
to drown out the impact of the negative. Yeah.
Which is so funny because it's like maybe there's been a day where Blake's heard one negative thing and I have to be like, remember what so-and-so said and so-and-so. And so you're almost like, yeah, whatever. And then it's like, well, remember. And then you're like, yeah, actually.
Yeah. I sound like I'm in high school. Yeah, whatever. What do you know? But obviously that's a good point though, is that it's also important to surround yourself with people who are going to speak. And it's not like disingenuous encouragement where like someone's like a terrible guitar player or a terrible singer and you're like, no, you're great. You got this.
Right.
You know, and it's like, oh my gosh. It's like surrounding yourself with people who genuinely know what's true about you. They know your value. They know your worth. And they also speak that into you. Feels like that's also part of it.
Remind you.
Yeah. Finding those people who can remind you of what is true about you.
Absolutely. That's important.
Well, something else that happens in business, though, is kind of this running stereotype of, and I hadn't really fully fleshed this out in my head of, I had forgotten that, like I said, that you started your own business and I was really trying to encourage you. And then now you got to take that role from me. What do you think about businesses? And this is so common where one partner, they quit their job, they start their business or what have you, and the other spouse doesn't fully embrace that role. Sometimes they're angry at maybe the reduced lifestyle. Like we were making this much money, now we're making this much, and here's all the options you've now taken away from me. Sometimes it's just a lack of security of, I don't know where this is going to go or where this is going to lead to or what the guarantee is. What do you think about, and I don't know how to phrase this question. It's not necessarily like, what do you think about those people, but why do you think it's so hard for spouses sometimes to embrace that role of support and speaking truth and really pressing their partner on towards whatever success and influence they want to have?
Let's see. Maybe there's fear, because I would be lying if I didn't say like, well, first, like you have said so many nice things about me being a support to you. And sometimes, like when you first were stating how much of a support I had been to you, first I was like, I was, but like I remember outwardly, I just remembered I had to really kind of digest like the dream you had and see it too, because when on the days where I had fear of like, yeah, like is this gonna work out, or like it does, like is just all the questions about it working out, or finances, or like I don't know, whatever. I just think I would remember your dream and your vision. And not only that, like I knew 100% that you were capable. So maybe certain spouses like doubt the capabilities in their other spouse, or their partner. Like maybe there is fear, and that like paints just like this cloud over the knowledge that, oh, my spouse is capable, but my fear now is going to drive me and like paint doubt over their like the longevity of this. Like we have to stick in it for a little while to see the fruit, but maybe that fear just kind of cripples them from being able to. Cause I remember days where I was fearful or worried or anxious. But I knew I had to be your number one cheerleader. I mean, and that's not to say I never was like honest with Blake about like, different things I felt, but I'm just saying, I think that you needed from me support and belief, because you believed in yourself, but on the days that you stopped believing in you, you needed to know that I believed in you. And so I just think that perhaps that can be the thing that gets in the way, is just like a fear that turns into, bears fruit of like doubt or frustration or maybe contempt, or like, you, just like you said, if you're, but you quality of life changes.
You weren't just it wasn't just blind encouragement from a cheerleader. Because I think you also, I think I had to be open. Like we joked about criticism, but I think I had, even when I was fragile, I had to be, sorry, our kid is definitely waking up on the monitor. So we're gonna have to wrap this up here in a little bit. I think beyond just the encouragement side of things though, I had to be open to your you were willing to give me an unbiased perspective. You know, in the sense, and I think it's one of the killers in business is surrounding yourself with people who give encouragement, but they can't give that criticism. Because I remember I'd done some speaking engagements. I had done them for free. This would have been sometime in the first year of my business where people have been like, hey, can you come speak to this group? Can you do this? And in my mind, I felt like I wasn't credible. I hadn't built up enough of the credibility of my brand to charge for these events. And so I was going out, I was doing these free events. I was giving out my business card. You know, the feedback was always great. And I remember you really pressing on me, okay, so when are they going to pay you for this? Because you had seen the content, you had seen me speak, and you felt like I was worthy of someone's dollar. But I remember coming home from a big event, or I had agreed to do a really big event, and you said, okay, so are they paying you for this?
Was there a conversation?
And I was like, well, no, you know, it's gonna be really great. And it's kind of like that old joke of like, it's so much exposure, you know, whatever.
Right. But every photographer hates.
Right. But I remember you almost sitting me down and like grabbing my shoulders and being like, Blake, you will not do another event without getting paid for it.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, but yeah. And you were like, no, you will not do another event without getting paid for it. And since then, I have never done a free event since. I've always asked about,
Holla.
Yeah, but that's money in our pocket that came, and it drives the revenue of the business because I had to be willing to take your criticism. And you had to, I mean, I just think about how beautiful it is, like the balance that you demonstrated of knowing, okay, today's the day I need to give deep encouragement, but this is a moment that Blake needs an honest truth. And you didn't deliver it harshly. You weren't like, hey, do you even know what you're doing? Why aren't you?
Right. You know? I had to validate, like, I know your heart is in the right place. It's, you know, and so I wasn't like taking advantage of, or I don't know. I really don't know what I was trying to say, except that, yeah, like there are times where when I know today's the day I have to give Blake like an honest truth, I had to be like, listen, like, you know that I have goodwill for you, right? And like, you know that I think you're amazing, right?
Right.
And then I could say what I had to say. Kind of like, I think you had made a podcast just recently about how you first kind of got into making these presentations of yourself that afterward, retrospectively, you were like, maybe that wasn't who I really am. You know, that wasn't what I wanted. And I remember in those moments watching you like record these little presentations, thinking to myself, but not really going deeper, but just feeling like, I wonder if this is something Blake really, really feels passionate about. And then like later when you did find your groove and you did find like the way in which you execute like your content and your what's it called? Like your marketing, whatever, that was honest to you, then I guess
it like came alive a little bit.
It came alive. Yeah. And I just remember being able to be like, you know, hey, I know what was happening was you were trying to figure it out. You weren't trying to, you know, be a dishonest person, or you weren't trying to be this or that or the other thing. You were trying to really hone in on like who you are. And once he figured it out, I knew like, okay, we're both he's in a safe place. He knows that I love him. So I can like come to you and be like, hey, listen, this is what I think about that. And you're awesome, you know? So I think it's a little safer now to do those like sandwich criticism things.
Well, and I think you've nailed it in that everyone kind of goes through this, because it's hard to be self-aware and really know, like, you know what you're passionate about in general and you know what you care about, but to like actually walk it out into like a business product and like what you offer people and how you talk about it is so ambiguous and hard to figure out. So I think, you know, again, and you did it really well of recognizing, okay, here's where I sort of sit back and encourage and recognize that this is something that he's flexing and figuring out. And then, okay, here's a moment where there's stability here and I can really hone in on this. Only because we're pretty much out of time. I want to wrap up with, so this is our 150th episode. I put out a newsletter today talking about practicing gratitude. You and I have talked a lot about gratitude and being more grateful people.
Right. Yeah.
I want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about, as we go into Thanksgiving, first of all, directly, what are some things that you're grateful for? And second of all, how have you seen an attitude of gratitude transform your life?
Well, so I want to answer the second question first, if I can.
Sure.
I used to think like, be gracious, like name 4 things you're grateful for. Like I used to kind of be like, oh, that's really sweet. And like, that's just kind of fluffy and nice. But really, this is actually something that has helped those mornings when I wake up like in a funk, and it's not just like practicing some virtuous, no, it's like really when I talk about what I'm grateful for, when I voice it, when I ask you, hey, what are you thankful for? I want you to tell me 3 things. It really, really, really does change the mood. It really is a great thing to do. So anyway, it has changed like, it's changing my outlook on different things.
Well, and as I put in the newsletter today, it's amazing how many studies have been done that link, not just link, but directly tie gratefulness with success. Does that surprise you, or is that now that you're kind of walking this through, not where both are?
Well, think about it. Like earlier we were talking about the ability to like get past that like negativity. And so in business, I think people who are more grateful get their eyes off of themselves. And so it's, when negativity or whatever wants to stick on you, you can just like easily move past yourself, and you're more preoccupied with like other people. And so you can be more successful because you're others driven and not like self-driven. So yeah, something I'm grateful for, definitely my daughter, Maylee.
Why did you say her first before me?
Well, I think that's like a given. I'm grateful for you. No, yeah,
we have a great daughter.
Yeah, she's beautiful sweet. And so cute and sweet.
I'm grateful for her too. I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for the journey we're both on.
Yeah.
We're out of time. Our kid's awake.
Yeah, she's
so
ready
I should
for us
go
to
be a
get
dad. Joy has a lesson coming up here in about 20 minutes. So I got to go do dad duty. Is there anything else you want to say to wrap up?
Just if you're listening to this, I want you to make a list of just 3 simple things you're grateful for. And if it includes a person, just tell that person.
I think that's key, right? The actual telling. We don't do that a lot.
Yeah.
Great advice. And for all of you listening, hey, if you have never checked out the podcast before, what the heck are you waiting on? Click that subscribe button. We'll keep bringing you good advice wherever you are. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a 5-star review. Hey, I mentioned at the start of the episode, we're on Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Patreon is a website where you can support some of your favorite content creators. You can jump on there and see some of the awesome perks that we're giving out to all of the Good Advice supporters. You can even get your business advertised here on the podcast, just like we've done with some episodes in the past. Hey, I am so grateful, and I have so much gratitude, not just for my wife coming on the show today, but also for people who have supported the podcast, who've talked about the podcast, who've recommended the podcast. Hey, you know who you are, and I am so grateful for you. Wherever you are this week, as you go into Thanksgiving, I want to challenge you and encourage you to practice gratitude, to practice gratefulness. And despite all the crazy things happening right now, I encourage you, have an awesome week. I hope you have lots of laughter right down into your gut, into your core. And hey, we'll be back. We got an episode coming later this week, and then we'll catch you later. Happy 150th episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll check you later. See ya.